I think a lot of people have come into DC with an intention to get rid of wasteful spending, and they get, 2 steps into the process and realize, forget about it,
Yeah.
right? This is just way too hard. This is like pulling teeth out of an angry crocodile, right? Right? I'm not gonna. It's not worth the risk.
Yeah. Why would you pull teeth out of an angry crocodile?
I wouldn't.
You know what their attitude is? I made my money all by myself. How dare your government take my money from me? I don't want to pay taxes.
All right, so talking about Doge cuts, there's some interesting old clips. First of all, I love the internet. Everything is forever. So, of course, Democrats are losing it over Elon Musk and Doge trying to cut all of this waste, except some pretty high-profile Democrats wanted to do this exact thing. Here's Barack Obama.
Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions. And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. Waste we should be getting rid of, even if we didn't have a deficit. Sure, some of these cuts aren't that big, but no amount of waste is acceptable. Not when it's your money. Not at a time when so many Americans are already cutting back. Just as families are living within their means, government should too. Did you know the federal government pays for a website devoted to a folk music ensemble made up of forest rangers? They're called the Fiddlin' Foresters. I'll put their music on my iPod, but I'm not paying for their website. You're not only paying for websites no one needs, you're paying for thousands of buildings all across the country no one uses. We need to step up our game. We need to go after every dime. We need to make government work for you. That's why, starting today, I've asked the Vice President to lead a renewed effort to hunt down misspent tax dollars in every agency and department of this government. We're calling it the Campaign to Cut Waste. And I know Joe's the right man to lead it, because nobody messes with Joe.
First of all, I checked. That's not AI. He actually said that. I don't recall Democrats losing their ever-loving minds at Barack Obama.
No, yeah. I remember when he said that, and it's why, and I know you're right there with me. That's why this whole thing is just so ridiculous on the face of it. Where, I saw some signs over the week. People were holding up signs, "Stop the Elon Musk coup," and you're going, guys, this is just an audit. It's just another sad example of how ridiculously politicized we've gotten in this country, where stuff that we all used to agree on, right? Like everybody knows. Here's the other thing. Everybody on DC knows what Doge is doing should have been done already, and that it's way overdue, and they know all that, right? They know all that. This is just political nonsense. And watching, the other one too is I watch these people that are protesting, and I'm a little jealous of them, right? Because here's the argument. Their quality of life must be just off the charts. You have time to go protest government spending cuts?
Yeah.
I mean, you must have it made, right? Like, I mean, I don't even know how I couldn't justify doing that, other than, I would have to prioritize scooping dog excrement out of the yard rather than doing that, right? Like, who has the time to protest government spending cuts?
Well, I think that's why so many of them are elderly. Like, it's like the gray-haired woke brigade in Seattle at the Tesla dealerships, and they're just because they're retired, Zach. That's what they want to do with their free time.
And I want to look at them and go, what is he doing to you? And that's the most frustrating part about the current environment that we're in, is somebody that kind of likes to rely on facts. I find them useful, to have all of this disparate nonsense going around, where it's like some people are like, hey, horses are green and have 3 legs. And you're like, no, they don't. And, you get called a bad name for saying no, they don't.
The lengths. I just talked to my show this week about an appointed city council member who was talking about cannibalism fetishes on the internet. And I said that was bad. And the left found a way to call me the crazy one. I'm like, they will absolutely. It's Orange Man bad, right bad. They'll find. I mean, right now they're defending the MS-13 gang members.
Oh, so they're defending everybody. It was like
find a way to defend anything.
Yeah, it was like the clip that you put out, which I thought was just startling, right? The guy is reading text from a book.
Oh, yeah.
Right? that was put in Washington school libraries, and as he's reading the text on the Washington state government floor, he gets interrupted and says, quit speaking inappropriate, right?
Please refrain from such graphic descriptions, and please confine your remarks to the policy.
If it's too graphic for me to talk about here on the floor of the House, is it not too graphic for a teenager to be taking home?
And he's like, dude, so this is okay for 15-year-olds in high schools to be reading, but we can't address it in a government. What do you do when everybody's just lost their mind?
I don't know. I watch it on I got family members who I'm just like, you got to turn off MSNBC. You got to do something because this is not healthy.
Yeah.
And the whole existential climate change is an existential threat to our country crowd burning Teslas. I'm like, gosh, that's weird.
It's amazing how that narrative switches, right? It's a climate catastrophe, climate emergency. Let's go burn some cars.
Yeah.
Right. You can't make it up.
No, it's nuts. Obama says it. Oh, great. Trump, bad. So we have pontificated on this show a little bit about how much of what we're seeing is like waste or incompetence or oversight or lack of thereof, and how much of it is actual fraud, like that should lead to charges. So here's what Elon Musk said about that.
If you say, look, what's the waste to fraud ratio?
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's like 80% waste, 20% fraud. But you do have these sort of gray areas.
Yeah.
So,
Example
would be, we saw a lot of payments going out of Treasury that had no payment code and no explanation for the payment. And then we'd try to figure out what that payment is, and we'd see that, okay, that contract was supposed to be shut off, but someone forgot to shut off that contract, and so the company kept getting money.
Wow.
Now, is that waste or fraud?
Yeah, both.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
but it's sort of a
you
gray
know you're
area
getting something
because
you're not supposed to get.
You're not supposed to get it, but the government sent it to you, and nobody from the government asked for it back.
That's actually, you hit it right on the head, because I think you had estimated, I think you said up to 20% is probably fraud. So good job, Zach.
Well, thank you. You know, to be fair, these things always have, rhythms to them and rhymes to them. And when you're looking at a bureaucracy like that, it's funny how statistical analysis comes into play, just because usually those situations end up being 80-20, right? There's a reason why we call it the 80-20 rule. And I think it's important that we don't understate or we don't overstate the fraud part, the way that, and I thought Musk did a really good job defining that. But the other thing that we have to realize is, guess what's just as damaging to us as American citizens, right? The 80% waste is just as damaging as if it was 80% fraud.
Yeah.
Right. So the pernicious impacts of it being 80-20 one way or the other don't really matter, right? The money is still being wasted. And at a certain level, I think you can look at some of the quote unquote waste and you can almost think of it as fraud, because it is purposefully ridiculously spent money for political means, right? Or for political ends. So, yeah, and I agree with his estimate. The other thing, like we've talked about too, is that remember, we're just talking about the things that are clearly identifiable, right? That are clear, like, hey, this is nonsense, to use Obama's term, right? Wasteful spending is the forestry fiddlers or whatever they're called, right? But there's so many other types of waste that is structural that isn't even getting seen, right? Like you might see like a $50 billion program to this one, and everybody's like, oh yeah, we know what that program is. That isn't waste. You're like, well, hold on, right? Just because that's a viable program that we all know about, you don't know what's happening inside.
Right, doesn't mean we should pay for it.
No, and it doesn't mean, like I said, getting inside of, being involved or helping out this family member with that product that they're developing for the Department of Defense. Mm-hmm. It just puts you in that, in that arena, and you start realizing how this thing is, how these things are done. And I'll just tell you, from what we've seen on the Department of Defense side, like an easy way to start thinking about how out of control costs are on the government side is, and this is no joke, and I've been through the process, okay? When the government is buying anything for the purposes of defense, and I'm going to stick to that because this is the only process I'm familiar with. Every time you hear about the government procuring or buying something for defense or for the military, in your mind, it is a safe assumption to make that they are paying somewhere between 50 to 100% more than that item actually costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is the bureaucracy that is built up, meaning and that's the type of waste that doesn't get seen, right? That just looks normal. Well, the government paid this for this much. Did they get it? And you're like, yeah, they did. So that was a free exchange. Well, what did they pay for that, right? And you start seeing how $20,000 toilets happen, and you start seeing how $500 nails happen, right? And it's the procurement process. And there's some of it that's laid out for good reasons because they're trying to prevent one contractor or one private company having too much of the government business, and right, but which is a good concept. We don't want the government starting to favor businesses, but we need to figure out a smarter way to go about it because, again, to be around it, and my words are almost, it would take like an hour and a half of walking through specific examples, but it's just startling to see how much nonsense there is and what a good actually costs to produce versus what the government ends up paying for it, and then seeing how many hands get paid along the way. Yeah. It's shocking, and if most people realized it, I think that they'd be disgusted.
Well, we see that with transportation projects at the state level all the time, where it's like, there's the amount the government paid for that. Here's the amount the private sector would have paid had they been the ones who had to build that bridge, and it's just insane. And, it was interesting because we were playing that clip and he was explaining that some of it's a gray area. And he gave that example of, if the government keeps paying someone, is that fraud or is it waste? And you and I were both like, what is it? It's not all so cut and dry, but I think, in an example like that, is it criminal for that person to keep taking that money if the government's writing checks? I mean,
it should be.
It should be, but
because it is in any other aspect of life. So just in case you didn't know, if somebody mistakenly plugged $1 million into your checking account and didn't know, and you didn't say anything and started spending it, that is illegal.
Because it's not your money. It's not your money. And I guess I'd have to know if they were informed that their contract was coming to an end and then the checks kept coming in and they just kept taking them. But even if you don't want to call that fraud, someone should still be accountable for it. And I think that's one of the issues in government spending and, the big bloated contracts that you point out is there really is a lack of a personal feeling of accountability. Because when you're in the private sector, it's like, well, that's the bottom line. My job depends on me making sure that we're getting the best deal on this. But in the federal government for too long, nobody's job's depended on it. They just sort of sign off on it.
Oh yeah, and I think you can make a very rational, logic-based argument that it's worse now than it's ever been.
Oh yeah.
I mean, look at what these people look at the people. I just can't go back to this enough. We're at a point where people are protesting spending cuts when we've got a deficit that's 7% the size of the economy. To put that in perspective, Brazil, right? That's got like ridiculous out of control inflation. Brazil's at 10% deficits. We're right there. And these people, that's what they're protesting. So like you said, it's I don't know if we have a constituency that is even capable of understanding the problems anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just because I'm sitting there going, guys, this is so apolitical. What DOGE is doing is completely apolitical. It helps all of us. It is just madness. And it scares me. Here's why it scares me. It scares me because I don't think we've ever been here before, in the sense that you've got almost 50% of this country that is so ideologically captured that they could be convinced that attacking government waste is a problem.
Yeah. It's insane. And it's not the worst thing that they're defending right now, or,
No.
like I said, MS-13 or whatever it is. And it's interesting because, I wasn't involved in what I'm doing now when Barack Obama was president. And when he said that, I was pretty young. So I really I can't go back and say, what did I say about that on my show? And was I morally consistent for what Obama was doing? But, even that, I'm glad he said it, but you turn around and that's a job he gave Joe Biden. And look how much Joe Biden grew the size of government. And Joe Biden, it's laughable to hear Obama talking about how Joe's the guy for that job. It's like, Didn't turn out
Wow.
didn't turn out that way, did it?
Well,
Just
no,
crazy.
I think Joe was the guy for the job because I think Obama knew, and I don't think, and I remember that very well. I'm a little older than you, but and I remember being supportive of it. I didn't vote for Obama, but I remember sitting there thinking there was a veneer around Obama at the time where I actually held out hope that he was much more middle ground than he ended up being, right? And so there was this feeling at the time, and there was this hope that, look, there's things I don't agree with him, but this guy's got his feet firmly on the ground. He's addressing government waste. He's going to go after it. Okay, well, how did you know the minute that was nonsense? When he appointed Joe Biden, right? Because the biggest problem that we've got as far as, I mean, first of all, the entitlement programs, we've made promises that we just didn't think out well, right? So that's A. But then B, it's, the pork and the horse trading and all the hidden expenses and when you turn that over to a creature of DC like Biden, you immediately have to know that nothing's going to get cut.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing's going to get cut. And but I was cheering for Obama at the time, hoping that he followed through. I wasn't surprised that he didn't. And like I said, I don't even know if I'm going to sit there and say, like, I'm not going to accuse Obama of it all just being nonsense. I think a lot of people have come into DC with an intention to get rid of wasteful spending, and they get, 2 steps into the process and realize, forget about it,
Yeah.
right? This is just way too hard. This is like pulling teeth out of an angry crocodile, right? I'm not going to, it's not worth the risk.
Yeah. Why would you pull teeth out of an angry crocodile?
I wouldn't. I mean,
Okay.
definitely not something I'd make a practice of.
Make a nice
But-
necklace,
Oh, I know that could be certainly ornate. It'd be a showstopper, of course.
For sure. And I almost, we'll get up to our Doge miss the week in a second, but I almost think Democrats should be sitting back, letting it happen, and then reaping the rewards, because I really don't think our country is going to see the benefits of what's happening now, probably until Trump's out of office. So they
Probably.
could just wait. Like, so Trump's going to get all the heat, all this stuff, and then he's going to make the country better, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And you think that they're going to give him credit for that? Of course not. They're going to take that credit for themselves and who's ever president at the time. So this is the difficult work that even Obama wanted to do. They're finally doing it. Let him do it and then take credit for it in 5 years. I don't care.
What we really need is we need 2 parties that are serious about making changes and that are serious people. And they need to be competing against each other because that's what holds them both accountable. And when the further off the rails the left gets, it doesn't just benefit us if we win elections. We need them to get, like, I don't want to say need. I mean, we could figure it out as we go, and I think we are. But we'd be much better off if people were sober-minded.
Yeah.
And, and the other thing that we've got to start doing, and you don't hear any of this, right? We've got to change the paradigm in this country, and parties need to start supervising, and they need to start running herd on their own politicians, right? We got to hold our own politicians accountable. And you just, it's so amazing to me to listen to these liberals go off on so many of these diatribes and listen to them and go, so first of all, he hasn't done the majority of the things you just accused him of, but you know who has? The guy you voted for, right? And like, and that's an objective statement. Like, I'm not, tilting the, tilting the deck or trying to accuse them of something they didn't do. It just is what it is.
Yes,
And
self-awareness is not a strength of theirs, but you're right that, you and I are both free market people and competition is good. And one party having monopoly over ideas is not a great thing. And so I do agree with you that, look, Democrats or some form of them need to exist and they need to be serious so that we can have a competition of ideas and may the best idea prevail. All right, let's get to our Doge Miss of the Week. Okay, this one's out of Seattle. So the Seattle Times is getting trolled by Doge right now. I'll start with the Times story because if you look at it, so the headline, here's a dead person on Social Security in Seattle with plenty to say. And it's got this picture of this nice, sweet old couple. Like, they're just like, oh, I'm here, I'm alive. So basically, this is an op-ed by Danny Westneat, and it tells a story of this old elderly man, and he got $5,000 taken out of his account because he was marked as being deceased. So he got Social Security payments but the system said he was deceased, and so all of a sudden this money is missing from his bank account. It kind of tells his tale. Now, Danny Westney doesn't directly blame Doge, but the very first word in the article is Doge. It clearly is intended to suggest that Elon Musk's hunt for waste, fraud, and abuse led to, like, as good as Elon Musk, like, putting his hands in this guy's piggy bank and taking the money away. So Doge responds to it, quote tweets this Seattle Times article, calls it maliciously misleading, said, while the database error is unfortunate, this has zero connection to Doge. This type of error, unfortunately, has occurred regularly, around 500 times each month for years, in the same way that dead people are marked as living. The reverse also happens, with Mr. Johnson's case being one example. As of last week, Doge and Social Security are now working together to increase the accuracy of the death master file and eliminate these errors, the first ever real attempt to do so. Thoughts?
Well, I got a couple. So, first of all, this type of sophomore and simple thinking, it makes my head hurt, because we're talking about a nation of 360 million people.
Yeah.
Okay, so to think one thing, somebody is going to miss a payment. Let's. So if that right there is a reason to get rid of Doge, let me tell you another story about what some government agencies have done. And I've got a million examples of this, but I have a client who all of a sudden we sat down to do an annual review. We're going through her accounts, and it happened over the period of like 2 months. So it wasn't like we didn't see it, but we were going over with her, and we'd realized that we saw debits out of one of her portfolios over the course of the previous like 45 days of like $120,000 out of her account. And we're like, at first I'm going, this got to be administrative error. We contact Schwab, the platform that holds her account, and we find out that the IRS thinks that she miscoded or did something. And so without saying a word to us, word to her, anything, they sucked $120,000 out of her account.
Wow.
It took us almost 2 years to get the money back. It was 100% the IRS's mistake. And when they finally paid her back, they did not pay her interest on the money that they took for her for almost 2 years. Okay, where is Danny's article about that in the IRS?
That's
right?
not a good angle, though, Zach. You can't knock Trump or Elon for that.
But you want to look at him and go, this is exactly why we need Doge, you morons, because the government is extraordinarily inefficient. Now, again, when you're dealing with that many people, you're going to be able to find somebody that missed a payment. You're going to find somebody that got too much, right? When you're dealing with that many people, there are going to be mistakes. But this is what is just so, it just enrages me, because you got all of they're throwing out these accusations. Oh, Doge is taking money out of people's pockets. First of all, they can't. Legally, they can't. But B, if we want to talk about governments dipping their hands into pockets and taking away money, like there's a lot of examples that are far more egregious than that.
Yeah.
But the thing is Elon Musk doesn't run the IRS. So you're not going to hear that story.
Well, and as you said, this has been happening for years, and actually we're trying to fix it right now. So I mean, we pre-taped this show. As of right now, it's been about 9 hours since Doge corrected this article and said what you're doing is misleading, and there's no editorial notes on it yet.
Of course.
So they're not going to correct it. They don't care. There's no interest, because all they're trying to do is like, wow, this has been happening for years, but it happened while Elon Musk is doing stuff with Social Security, so it must be Elon Musk's fault. The Seattle Times continues to be one of the biggest disappointments of my life.
Right.
I've got a good one for you. In other Doge adjacent news, oh God, Lord help us. So Newsweek, speaking of the media, saw fit to write an entire article about 18 federal workers they spoke to who say they are facing mental health concerns amid the Doge cuts. It's messing with people's minds, Zach.
Yeah,
the
I think
uncertainty.
I think it's called work. So, I mean, I face that uncertainty. Let me see. Yeah, pretty much every morning during the week, right around 5:30 when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
Like what? Can I say this? I tell my kids all the time, and pardon the language, it's not horrible, but I'm like, I feel like we've turned into candy ass university.
Oh, 100%.
Just like, wait, it's called being an adult. Yes, there's all kinds of concerns and responsibilities and worries, right? You're a freaking adult, for God's sake. I mean, who cares? Go start a business. Your mental health does not mean garbage to me. That's on you. You're an adult. Figure it out. Right? I mean, come on.
And everything else is not job related. Stress of paying bills, kids, whatever it is. Like the second line says, an employee, an Iraq war veteran with PTSD at the Department of Veterans Affairs, says he's gone from loving his work to considering taking his life. A third is struggling to sleep and has stress headaches, fearing the loss of a job he once thought was guaranteed as long as he met his targets. Literally giving examples. They said another worker wakes up and wishes she had not. She has lost 20 pounds since January 21st and says she is traumatized. This is Newsweek. Basically saying since January 21st, when Trump took office, she's lost 20 pounds, she's traumatized, and using a vet with PTSD saying he's thinking of killing himself over the DOGE cuts.
Well,
these people have no shame.
No, and let's separate the discussion about veterans for God's sakes to normal workers. Okay, right. Second of all, you've lost 20. I mean, I don't know. Send Donald Trump a tip. You didn't buy Ozempic. I mean, he gave you the Ozempic treatment for free. Why? Send him a thank you card, for God's sake.
20 pounds. That's a lot.
Well, I mean, look, if that quote unquote, look, I'm probably going to step on toes, but who cares? If that 20 pounds, if that stress caused a 20 pounds loss, chances are there's another 50 that needs to come off. I'm just saying, right?
Oh, you don't lose weight that quick unless you had to lose. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could lose 20 pounds from worrying.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on, get a life.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like it. Let's end with a follow-up to last week. Speaking of unhinged people.
I'm not a mean person. I'm not a mean person.
Look, Zach, I was thinking it. I just didn't say it. And I was also picturing someone with purple hair.
That's my role. I'll say what nobody else is willing to.
I was like, thank God he said that, because I was just gonna say I picture exactly what this person looks like, and they needed to lose their 20 pounds.
Yeah, if that lost it for them, they ought to send a thank you card.
Hey, this coming from someone who recently lost 40 pounds. Like I haven't always been in the best shape ever, so.
But you didn't blame Trump for it, I'm pretty sure.
You know, I did blame the pandemic for it. So I guess I blamed China. I blamed China.
Yeah, they're a good scapegoat. Right?
Oh, okay. Let's end with this. Because we talked about it last week, I'm actually kind of happy about this, because color me shocked. They're actually arresting people for the Tesla vandalisms. I mean, I don't know that Seattle has done a whole lot of arresting, but in other places across the country, they've been arresting people for the Tesla vandalisms, for the Tesla firebombs. Somebody was arrested at New York Post, trans Tesla vandal, who threw Molotov cocktails at cars. So I guess I'm happy to see that. And the feds have come out and said, we're taking this really seriously, kind of like the swatting thing. So swatting has been happening for a long time, and it's been targeted at conservative influencers lately. And the FBI came out and said, we're going to take this seriously, and we're going to prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law. So I'm glad to see this, because Lord knows around here we've had our share of domestic terrorism that has gone completely unchecked.
Oh yeah, and then you see some of the videos, and this part of this is probably uniquely, I mean, San Francisco probably too, but uniquely a Portland, Seattle, San Francisco kind of thing, because one of the things I saw some of those videos over the weekend of people vandalizing Tesla cars, and it's the daylight certainty, walk right up to it, the confidence they've got, right? Just brazen, and that is 100% on the local governments in these cities.
Yep.
They have engendered that. They have nurtured that. They have grown that level of just complete disregard. And, you probably have a lot of people around the nation that listen to this show. But I mean, if people around the nation had I have these conversations with clients all the time that they still are not aware of how nuts it is in cities like Seattle and Portland, and what you can get away with and what you can't. And, it's just, it's a mess. And again, I still look at these people and I'm like, you're looking at the world today and you think Elon Musk and Tesla is your problem. It's really incredible. There's a part of me that actually envies liberal politicians, Because I mean, you can get complete absolution from your constituency by just coming up with a bad guy story.
Yeah, yeah.
Completely covers everything you did or didn't do, incompetence, fraud, whatever. You just blame it on Trump, and they just swallow it wholesale. It really is remarkable. And there's a part of me that, tip of the cap to those guys, because talk about having absolutely zero oversight or responsibility to your constituency because they don't care.
Easiest scapegoat ever. I remember them blaming like the 2020 riots and stuff on like Trump, or getting angry at Trump over things. And it's like, holy smokes, they use that man. They're the most effective scapegoat they've ever had. Don't focus on our failures on homelessness, Trump bad. Don't focus on our failures on crime, Trump bad. Abortion, Trump and abortion. Trump, abortion, Trump, abortion. And they can just get away with absolutely anything. So yes, let's hope that these Tesla folks are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Although I'm sure in Seattle they'll get little slaps on the wrist, on their thin little delicate Antifa wrists.
Yes. What I think is funny too is how many of them do you think were on the waiting list for a Tesla Model 3 just like 2 years ago?
Being bought by their mommy and daddy.
Yeah, exactly. Good God.
Love it. All right, Zach, still bullish on Doge?
Absolutely. Keep it rolling.
Good. Okay, give a quick tease for your 100 Days live webinar coming up.
Yes, that's coming up, I believe, this Thursday
yeah.
at 3 o'clock. It is free of charge. This one, we try to keep it 45 minutes, and it's just really a primer on who we are, what makes us different, how we're active managers, how that's different than the vast majority of your assets get managed, and then walking through. We kind of had a rough start to the year on Wall Street. We're actually having a really nice year, solidly up on the year, and explaining to people why, how. It's not magic, it's not craziness, but just explaining to them what's going on in the world and how we're at an extraordinarily historic place that we've never been in terms of the world, the U.S. making up a bigger percentage of world market, stock market value than any nation ever has, and how offsides it is, and how people need to be diversified. And I think that there's a lot of pain that can be avoided, but more importantly, just great opportunities. We're just going to walk through. And so even if people didn't become investors with us per se, I think it could still teach them a lot if they were doing it on their own. So if nothing else, maybe they'll leave more informed, more educated.
Yeah, and if they have some uncertainty about what's happening right now, explaining the first 100 days of the Trump administration and helping them make sense of what's going on in a way that isn't like MSNBC, everything's burning to the ground and you won't be able to afford to retire. So, all right, exactly. Zach Abraham, people can sign up for that for free, knowyourriskradio.com. We'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me.